All right, in this second video, we're going to pick up and start talking about the physiology that's going on and the basic age at puberty, what's happening with the animals, and going from there. So generally, we define puberty as the first ovulation and estrus in the female. And the age at puberty, like we talked about earlier, was about 6 months on average, but it can vary depending on which species we're dealing with and a variety of other things, including breed, plane of nutrition, and actually seasonality of their birth, were they fall or spring born animals. Generally, size is more important than age when deciding to breed ewe lambs or doe kids. You want to have the females about 60 to 70% of their mature weight before being bred for the first time. So, for example, our mature weight of our ewes at the sheep unit are about 200 pounds. And if we were to go 65% of that, somewhere in the middle, they should be around 130 pounds when they're first bred. And so that is kind of one of the guidelines that we use, is that they should be about 120, 130 pounds before we even try to get them bred. They should be managed separately until they wean their first offspring, if you can in any way. Because those yearling ewes, if they conceive early at that 120, 130 pounds, and they're lambing as yearlings, they're still growing. And so you really want to manage their nutrients and keep an eye on them. We don't necessarily manage them separately, but any first-time moms, we keep an eye on to make sure that they're maintaining body condition adequately or not losing too much body condition rapidly when they start lactating. And so we really try to keep an eye and manage them until they go through breeding that second time. And that's when their bodies are pretty much starting to become fully mature. So one of the key concepts that we have to deal with small ruminants, whether it's sheep or goats, is the concept of short day breeding, meaning they are photoperiod sensitive. And both sheep and goats and horses actually are photoperiod sensitive. The mare is a long day breeder, meaning they have a gestation length of 11 months. And most animals want to have their offspring in the spring so that there's good feed coming on, if we think of a grazing system. And so mares with a gestation of about 11 months, they tend to breed in the spring and will have their foals about a year later. Sheep and goats are considered short day breeders, meaning because they have a 5 months gestation, if you go back from spring, 5 months, that puts it in the fall or autumn. And so they're generally going to want to cycle the best during this time of year right now, October, and lamb in the spring. And so, but that doesn't always fit our markets. And so this is one of the biggest constraints we have in reproductive management of our sheep and goats, is this short day breeding. So for us, raising project lambs, trying to get them to lamb right now like we are doing is considered out of season. So we have to really pay attention to nutrition, health, and well-being of these animals to get them to put their energy and nutrients into reproduction out of season. And that can be a bit of a challenge. And it's definitely affected by breed. We have more trouble trying to get our Southdowns to lamb in the fall than we do with the blackface ewes. So when we talk about these seasonal breeding habits, it's because sheep and goats are what we call seasonally polyestrous, meaning there's seasons of the year they're not even cycling. And so it's triggered by that photoperiod, and that is generally that fall period, August, actually into September through December. And one of the theories is that breeds originating further from the equator have the shorter breeding seasons. And so closer to the equator have a little bit longer breeding seasons. So if we take a look at some of the different breeds, some of the breeds that have the longest breeding season, meaning 6 to 8 months, they're flexible to out-of-season breeding, those types of things, are the Finn sheep, which is the litter-bearing species, the Romanoff, Dorset, Rambouillet, and the Polypay. Those that are in that medium season, and this is what we have, the Suffolk and Hampshire crosses, or Oxfords, those larger terminal sire breeds. The short season, where it's less than 4 months, is the North Country Cheviot, the Texel, the Leicester, Shetland, those types of breeds. And then, like, our South Downs fall into that category as well, which makes it a big challenge. And so, generally, goats are going to be less seasonal than sheep, which we still struggled when we had the meat goats to really get them bred to kid in the fall. We had to aim for kidding in September, mid to early September, to be able to get fall-born kids. That means April breeding. And when it was definitely cooler out. They struggled with the heat a little bit more. Tropical breeds, those closer to the equator, tend to cycle throughout the year. So like some of the hair sheep developed in Africa, the Caribbean, those guys actually will cycle throughout the year. And then some breeds like the Dorset, as we talked about, have that longer breeding season, meaning they cycle longer throughout the year, like half the year, as opposed to a 4-month cycle. There's some things we can do to extend the breeding season. The first is the ram or buck effect, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but just providing a male, the pheromones, can extend that estrus period. Hormonal treatments, using cedars, exogenous hormone injections, stuff like that. Light control. If we can, it'd be nice if we had a big UV barn and we could control the lights and those types of things and control the cycle of the sheep. That is not practical, but it would be nice. Generally, those ewe lambs and doelings will usually cycle that first fall, and they don't respond as well to the artificial manipulation of using hormones to kind of control that cycle. That's going to wrap up the second video. The next one is going to pick up and start talking about the estrus cycle.